One Uptown TV. Yo, enough there, me I represent. Bang.
Been representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad, bad we bad. Bad we bad, Malcolm had stopped being Negro years ago. It had become too...
To be given the rights of a human being.
The young ones around you and the not so young ones about Haiti's history and reminding ourselves, going to provide health care to many sick, alien, suffering persons, Jamaicans, encountered the unprecedented embodiment of evil in this most hideous, ugly, wicked, and detestable form. What she encountered, we're trying to understand, but we cannot understand that, for what she encountered was not human. What she encountered was reptilian. It was cold. It was repugnant. It was despicable. It was alien. It was devoid of empathy. What we saw on that video, the images, verbally and physically abusing a woman, throwing her around on the ground like a rag doll, trampling over her body, standing on her, spitting in her face, stomping on her head. It was ghoulish. It was a nightmare. And this is what we are faced with. This is our reality. This is our reality. And we can't ask but help the question. We can't help but ask the question, you know. Would a white woman in her place have been treated with such ruthless abandon and disdain? And I am asking the question because we must ask it. Black women and black girls on this island in Jamaica cannot feel safe. We cannot feel safe. All civil servants, concerned citizens should take to the streets in solidarity, but also on behalf of ourselves in opposition to this continued violence against women, against children, and the vulnerable. Because what we have is a failing state. And if we do not stand up now, we've got to take a stand even if we're sitting down. Tomorrow the Nurses Association will protest. The midwives will protest. The women will protest. But we ask the men to join and lock hands with us and protest in the streets. Something has to be done. Let us do what we can. What do you have in your hand? Use it. A little bit about Reverend Kobe Little before we go to him. Reverend Kobe Little is a global citizen, a strategic advisor, public policy advocate, faith leader, and dean of Justice Chapel. He serves as president of the Baltimore NAACP and vice president and political action chairman of the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP. He also serves on the advisory council for Strong Future Maryland. He's currently exploring the theory and praxis of the prophetic ministry tradition and their implications for democracy building, justice, advocacy, and equity advancement. His leadership during the COVID pandemic focused on three thrusts, and he was very involved in sharing information, advocating for equity and human rights, and providing resources to address community needs. His recent work includes advocacy and government accountability, consumer protection, police reform, and civilian oversight of law enforcement, worker protections and fair wages, health equity, fair election financing, energy and environmental justice, democracy strengthening and eliminating white supremacy, and structural equity. And a lot to say about Reverend Little, but finally to say he spent several years in Selma, Alabama, learning from foot soldiers and giants about the civil rights movement. And while there, he served as an organizer, domestic terror researcher, journalist, policy advocate, campaign advisor, and congressional staff. And we'll tell you a little bit more about him as we go on. Reverend Kobe Little, thank you so much for joining us on the phone lines. You are, of course, in Jamaica for a very special event, celebrating and paying tribute to 100 years of Malcolm X.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the program.
You've come in for a very special tribute in celebration of 100 years of Malcolm X. We're going to talk about that in a minute. This is going to be at the University of the West Indies tomorrow, so please write that down in your diaries. Going to be talking to Reverend Little a little bit about Malcolm X himself. We played this morning Ozzie Davis, the eulogy that remains burnt in so many of our minds. But Malcolm X, Reverend Little, even as we celebrate and pay tribute to him, he once said you can't have capitalism without racism. And as we find ourselves in a period where there's talk about Donald Trump is telling us that he's resetting the table. From the World Economic Forum, they tell us that we're going through a global reset. We see that with our own two eyes. We're in 2025. Neoliberalism is the order of the day, but we're moving into technocracy and transhumanism. And we see so much of what we know, or what we've come to know, capitalism 2.0, all of that collapsing around us into a more surveillance kind of technocracy system. How would Malcolm X interpret today's global economic order, do you think, 100 years after?
Well, the unfortunate environment that we find ourselves in, as you have very aptly described, simply shows us the timeless nature of Malcolm X's teachings. Malcolm X calls us to organize. Malcolm X calls us to unite. Malcolm X calls us to work in a collective fashion. And he reminds us that whatever our diversity is, whatever our differences are, at the end of the day, white people act in oppressive manners because we are black. It doesn't matter, he says, if you're Episcopal or if you're Baptist or if you're Methodist or you're Muslim. It doesn't matter if you're a moose or an elk. The reason they're oppressing you is not because of those minor differences, but because you're black. And Malcolm works in a way to take complex themes, complex ideas, and make them very simple. When addressing the issue of our African identity, Malcolm says, if a cat has kittens in an oven, does that make them biscuits? Mm-hmm. And, of course, the answer is no, they're kittens. And in the same way, if African people have children in Europe or they have children in North America, at the end of the day, these children are still African children. And this is a theme that we would all be well served to observe. We hear people talk saying, it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're a black man, you're an African. Mm-hmm. This notion is important politically. It's important in terms of developing community, but it's also central to the healing of the African psyche for those of us who have been subjected to colonialism, those of us who have been subjected to the rape and pillage of human trafficking, to be able to have clarity on our identity and to feel positive about our identity, mm-hmm. to know that black is beautiful, to know that we are African people who come from a long line of history and contributions to humanity, makes a difference, especially when you live in a society that places a premium on Europeans and demonizes people of African descent. So one of the things that I love about Malcolm X is that he took complex themes, complex ideas. He addressed very important issues, and according to his own motto, he made it plain. Mm-hmm. And so we appreciate Brother Malcolm for his very sharp critical analysis.
Yes.
One of the beautiful things about Malcolm X was that he was able, through his teachings, to display his incredible intellect, but he always did it in a way that included everyone and never made anyone feel put down. And so, in an age where Donald Trump seeks to make $1 off of everything, in an age where Donald Trump seeks to spread hate, in an age where Donald Trump seeks to invoke real politics, where might makes right, Malcolm's clarion voice, his orientation towards justice, his call for us to unite globally in Pan-Africanism, his call, which, often people take Malcolm as a radical, but radicalism is relative. Malcolm was radical because what he advocated for black people, white people didn't want black people to have. But what he advocated for black people is what every nation of people expects to have for themselves. The ability to self-define, the ability to self-determine, the ability to control the politics and economics of our
and you know what? That takes me, sorry to interrupt, but this takes me to Mortimer Marcus Messiah Garvey and that foundation that Brother Malcolm had himself, which is a foundation of Garveyism, his parents being Garveyites, and even though after he left home we saw him going off into petty crime, but later on he came right forward, moving through religion and faith into this wider concept of Garveyism. And this is what I hear you articulating just now. Could you elaborate on that and how Mortimer Marcus Messiah Garvey informed his ideology and his actions later on?
Well, the Right Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey is rightly a Jamaican national hero. But the truth is, he is a Pan-African hero. He is a hero and an inspiration to African people all over the planet. And here's why. Marcus Garvey was adept at organizing. He was adept at communicating. And he was quite accomplished in terms of casting his vision for black unity and black strength. Malcolm X was a phenomenal, unique person in his time. And yet, he followed in the tradition of Ida B. Wells. He followed in the tradition of Marcus Garvey. And while I'll be in Jamaica on Monday for the program at the University of West Indies, and we look forward to seeing everybody from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., right now, I'm in Grenada. And I'm here in Grenada.
I thought you were on the island. Okay. Good morning, Grenada. All right. Yes, go ahead.
I'm here in Grenada to celebrate Mother Louise Langdon Little. This is Malcolm X's mother, who was born in Grenada and who was active in the UNIA, the organization founded by the Honorable Marcus Garvey. She was active in this organization in Grenada, and then took the teachings of Marcus Garvey, the teachings and the work of the UNIA to Canada, and then to the United States. And with her husband, the Reverend Earl Little, they moved to Omaha, Nebraska, to be missionaries for the UNIA, to spread the message of black unity, to spread the message of black empowerment, to spread the message of economic success for black people with the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. So I raise all this to say that Malcolm didn't find his way to Garveyism. Malcolm was born into the tradition of the UNIA and Garveyism. And it does us well to see and recognize and remember the long-standing connectedness that we as African people have all over the planet. Yes, of course, it's the gene, the bloodline. But it's also a very, very clear, shared, common thinking, a shared story of activism, a shared story of striving for what's best for our people, and unfortunately, a shared story of repression by white people who didn't want to see us succeed. But even in the face of that repression, we've had a very strong tradition of resistance and revolution.
Of course. And you mentioned bloodline. You yourself, the Reverend Kobe Little, I'm sure everybody heard when I said that just now. You are a blood relation to Brother Malcolm.
Well, I'll tell you, I see myself as a son, a spiritual son of Malcolm X. Yes, I am a descendant of Littles. My father's baby sisters and Malcolm X's daughters are the same age and lived and worked in New York at the same time. And that work at the radio station brought them together. They have established that they're cousins, but we haven't done. I have not done the DNA testing.
Well, the ancestral work, yes. But so I get you a spiritual son in the meantime, and you talk about that connection, which on so many different levels between us and among us as a people. I looked at, and I've been going through this again, looking at those last few years of Malcolm X's life when he left the Nation of Islam and started the OAAU, and what he began to do, which was to reach out to Africa, and that connection that he was making with African leaders in North Africa and Central Africa and West Africa and South Africa, and back to other, we saw him at Oxford University, for example. We saw him at the United Nations. And I just looked at that and I said to myself, the next rung, it seemed to me, and the next step for him was really a fulfillment in action of Maulamu Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And this is why I raised the question that we know he was born into it, and we know he understood it on many, many different levels. But he was really living the teachings of all the ancestors, and Maulamu Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who said, "Look to Africa." You know, this was phenomenal to me. What he was about to achieve. What is our responsibility when we talk about Malcolm X 100 years after? Do we just celebrate today and forget? What would you say is our responsibility?
Frank Fanon said each generation must
yes.
identify their destiny,
yes,
and either
fulfill it or betray it. Yes, fulfill it or betray it.
So, in the face of what Malcolm has done, the ancestors who supported him, the ancestors who led Malcolm to the heights which he climbed. The question that they ask us is, you've seen what Malcolm has done. Mm-hmm. You've seen what he did with the resources he had in the environment that he lived. Mm-hmm. What now will you do, not only to honor his work, but to continue the march, to continue the struggle, to continue the climb to self-determination and to self-love? Mm-hmm. You know, one of the great joys of my life is that I have been able to meet and know and work with the Honorable Stephen Golden, who is, as you know, president of the UNIA, and in Jamaica, and one of the key lessons of Malcolm X was join an organization. Malcolm called for every black person, wherever they were, to join an organization and to come into fellowship and to relationship with other black people to work on behalf of black people. So we each must join organizations. It's not enough to scroll through Instagram and like and comment on posts about black history. We've got to get involved. We've got to have real conversations and build relationships and plan and execute a strategy that advances our people. Execute a strategy that eliminates disunity. Execute a strategy that holds black government officials accountable and prevents them from having the room to betray us, the room to allow for economic inequality. We are that vanguard that holds the business community and the government accountable, and we do that through organization.
Yes.
And when we do that job well, we can sing as Tuck said, where are you going to run to? Down, presser, man. Where are you going to run to? Where are you going to hide? The sea won't hide you. The rocks won't hide you. The mountains won't hide you. But we have to do that work, and we have to do that collectively. What Malcolm also taught us was that we have to be people of integrity. And the way he taught that best, I think, is when he said he'd never trust a man without a watch.
Yes.
And on the face of it, it seems like a fashion statement.
That's true, yes.
But what Brother Malcolm was saying is, if you don't have a watch, how can we know
what time?
That you are going to be where you say you're going to be when you say you're going to be there?
And the metaphorical meaning is phenomenal in terms of what time is it, you know? You're going to come in from Grenada for tomorrow, and let me just let our listeners know that the Faculty of Social Sciences, the Department of Sociology, Psychology and Social Work, they're presenting at the University of the West Indies a special 100th birthday anniversary commemorative Malcolm X lecture. And you will be delivering that lecture, the main speaker, celebrating the legacy of Malcolm X, renowned activist and Pan-African champion, it says here. Reverend Kobe Little is a keynote speaker. A little bit of what you will be focusing on when you come in, Rev?
Absolutely. I'm grateful to the University of West Indies and Professor Michael Bennett for the invitation. It is a great honor to speak to the life of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. And so I think the most important thing that I will try to impart is that we have to be critical thinkers. But in addition to thinking, we have to take action. And we have to take action with integrity and with love. One of the amazing things about Malcolm X was his tremendous amount of love for black people. Even in the face of so much trauma, even in the face of so much self-hate, Malcolm was motivated by his love for black people, to serve black people, and to fight on behalf of black people.
We look forward to hearing you at the University of the West Indies tomorrow. That's Monday, May 19. And once again, it starts at 6 o'clock, as you said earlier, Reverend Little, between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. And this will be at the multifunctional room near the main library at UWI Mona campus. Also speaking, introductory remarks tomorrow from Dr. Michael Barnett. And you mentioned Stephen Golding earlier. Introductory remarks also from Stephen Golding. So this is happening tomorrow at the University of the West Indies. Reverend Kobe Little will be there. You can meet him in person, listen to him talk in person, and I suppose afterwards ask him questions in person. Reverend Little, safe travels, a safe journey into Jamaica from Grenada. I suppose you're leaving today?
I'll be there in time for tomorrow's program. We bring.
I hear you.
We pray that all goes well.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm coming with great anticipation.
Yes.
I'm so grateful to you as well for inviting me on the show and sharing this early morning moment with me and allowing me to speak to all of your listeners across the country.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my brother, Reverend Kobe Little, there coming into Jamaica for the Malcolm X lecture tomorrow at the University of the West Indies. Thank you so much. And once again, ancestral guidance as you come in.
God bless.
All right. So let me just quickly tell you once again where this will be. So it's a Faculty of Social Sciences at the Department of Sociology, Psychology and Social Work. They are presenting a special 100th birthday anniversary commemorative Malcolm X lecture celebrating the legacy of Malcolm X. And that will be tomorrow, of course. Once again, the venue is at UWI, University of the West Indies, the multifunctional room near the main library at UWI Mona campus. It starts at 6 o'clock. It goes through until 9. Speakers will include introductory remarks from Dr. Michael Barnett and introductory remarks from Stephen Golding. The keynote speaker, Reverend Kobe Little. We've got a big announcement to make, a really, really big announcement to make, and that's going to happen in less than a minute. Call your friends. Call your friends to call your friends to call your friends. We've got a massive announcement to make, and it's going to happen in less than a minute. In less than a minute. It's 6:59, and we're standing by for that breaking news. With just 30 seconds to go before that big announcement, is Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels. If we've got such a big announcement to make, then we have to have the attorney online. Good morning to you, Pan-African attorney at law, partner and head of litigation with the firm Knight Jr. and Samuels. Bert Samuels. His areas of practice have centered on industrial relations and civil and criminal litigation. He's been practicing law in Jamaica for over 40 years, and he's currently a partner in the law firm Knight Jr. and Samuels. We don't normally say so much about Bert, but we do have to say that this morning because we have to put into context and in context what we're about to talk about. Mr. Bert Samuels, a very big announcement coming from your law firm on behalf of a citizen of Jamaica. What is that announcement, sir?
So, 2 weeks ago, when we interviewed each other after that debacle in Montego Bay, where the gentleman pleaded guilty, without good advice, of course, to practice in Obi, and was sentenced by a African-Jamaican judge to 5 days or $5,000 for a fine. And we came on the program 3 days later, Kabu, and I promised your audience in Jamaica that I will take on the unconstitutionality of the Obia Act in Jamaica, that it was an affront and an abridgment of the right to religious practices. And consequent on that promise to you and came out of the discussion you and I had. So I'm instructed by Kabu and the ancestors. We filed an action on Friday of this week. Friday is what date, Kabu?
Today is the 18th. Saturday would be the 17th. Friday then would be the 16th.
Friday the 16th of May. Yes. We filed an action in the Supreme Court to challenge the Obia Act as being unconstitutional and in breach of 12 breaches of our Constitution, the right of persons to practice their religious and their spiritual beliefs without hindrance and without being treated as criminals and sent to prison. And so that's the breaking news.
This is a really big thing. This is really big. You heard it here first. Breaking news, an action filed in the Supreme Court. I want you to break that down for all of our listeners so that they can understand what that means. when we say an action has been filed in the Supreme Court, and you also talk about challenging the constitutionality of it. Break that down for all of our listeners, Bert.
Okay, so this is what happened. The last time the assembly in Jamaica in 1889, that would have been about 45, 60 years after our freedom, 1889, that act made it an offense to practice obeah in Jamaica. And the penalty was that you would go to prison and you would be whipped. So the obeah man was whipped as a part of punishment. And when we looked at the history of that law, we realized that our colonizers hated the fact that we brought our spirituality here, and they wanted to stop it and Christianize us into their religion. And they figured the best way to do it was not to preach to us, was not to have a church and have us converted, was that to make it criminal for us to continue with our spirituality. And what they did, Kabu, was to make obeah seem to be so evil, that the person, Professor Hutton, who is the applicant in this matter, he opined as an historian that they treated obeah as if it was worse than slavery. Let me repeat that. They made us believe, and some people in your audience today think that obeah is worse than slavery. So we have to have a change in the mindset. So we went to the court, and I looked at the Charter of Rights, which is a 2011 charter, and we picked up 12 breaches of the Constitution in this act, this old act.
Can you take us through them, or do you want to just identify some? Because we'd like to know the main concept. I've looked at it too, and brilliant work. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Bert Samuels. What are the main constitutional grounds? And you mentioned Professor Hutton, of course, as a person who, and we want to come back to that, who brought this case, if you will. So the main constitutional grounds on which Professor Hutton's case is being brought, what are they?
Fine. So firstly, the Jamaican Constitution at Section 17 says everyone has a right to practice their religious beliefs. So the fact that, and Professor Hudson has made out obeah to be a religion brought from Africa. So for all these years, for over a century and a half, the law has been on the books that to practice obeah is a criminal offense. It is the only religion that has been made a criminal offense in Jamaica. So that by itself is one of the breaches of the Constitution. That is the right of everyone to practice their religious beliefs. 1. 2, we said that there's no equality in the law because Indians come on television on Sundays and other days of worship for Christians, and they propagate their palm reading, their fortune telling, and they put it on television and publish it. And the obeah man has to be hiding between rocks and crevices to practice his fortune telling. Mm-hmm. So we say that there is a clause in the Constitution that says we should have equality before the law. 2. Mm-hmm. 3, the other one is that if you go to the obeah man, if you consult with him, you yourself, his membership, his clientele, is guilty of a criminal offense. And therefore, there is a clause in the Constitution that gives you freedom of association. That we should be able to associate with IRFM, we should be able to associate with our church, associate with trade unions. We should not be prevented from gathering and associating. So that's a breach of our freedom of association.
This morning, that there has been a constitutional challenge, if you will. At the heart of this challenge, the controversial Obeah Act, which is a colonial-era law that has long criminalized African-derived spiritual practices, and we had that in action just a few weeks ago on the island when a young man was charged, was given the sentence of paying or serving time in prison. And we have now on the island, Professor Clinton Hutton has taken legal action against the government of Jamaica, we can say that, asserting that the Obeah Act violates the constitutional rights of Jamaicans to freedom of religion, expression, and cultural identity. He's represented by none other than a Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels. He's a leading voice in Caribbean jurisprudence. He's a stalwart defender of Pan-African rights and justice. And he's helping us to understand what this means, this challenge to the Constitution. But we can't underscore this enough, that here we have while we're talking about the Constitution, because there's another ruling in another case regarding SOEs and so on that the court has ruled on.
Another day.
So the
I wanted to make a point.
Yes.
2 points.
Yes.
The first one is, did you tell me it's Haiti Day today?
Today is today is Flag Day in Haiti.
Okay, so why don't you make the link?
Why don't I make
the link? Make the link, Kabu.
I should have made a link a long time ago, because this and this is when we talk about the wider Caribbean.
Yes, you did say that. Yes.
Because and you mentioned Antigua and so on, but Haiti, for example, we saw just before the revolution in 1804 that when Haitians got together, Boukman and Cecile Fatiman and them, one of the things that they did was to go through these spiritual rituals, which they call voodoo in Haiti, but we have to understand voodoo within the context of the wider religious, in the same way that we understand Obia. So,
of course.
So we made that link on Haiti Day, on Flag Day in Haiti.
Of course, it is our day. The ancestors are awake, and that's why today the breaking news comes on their day, because they have been demonized.
Yes.
They want the Haitians to think that Haiti is poor because of voodoo. It's poor because the French have milked it and drained it, and the French parasites have stormed the economy of Haiti and trying to blame their poverty on voodoo. It is enslavement and colonialism. French colonialism is responsible for the poverty of Haiti, not voodoo. I mean, Clinton Hutton made the point to me in a discussion just before I filed the matter, that, Bert, if we didn't have that spirituality here, slavery would have mad all away.
And that
had to have that resort.
And that is a point. That's a really great point to be made in terms of going into your spirituality, understanding ourselves as spiritual beings, and going into that space for rituals. And praying is a ritual, and how you pray is a ritual. These are some of the things that post-traumatic slavery disorder causes us not to remember.
Indeed. But I don't want you to leave it out saying, Kabu, you are responsible for this action being taken. Annals of history will show that 2-3 Sundays ago, Kabu and I had a discussion, and that led to this action being taken. Don't take yourself out of the picture,
I refuse it. Thank you so much, Bert. I will not take. I respect that. Thank you so much.
Big up to Kabu, and
I
Kabu,
appreciate
you need to let them know that every other day we were speaking and moving together, preparing this matter together. You're part of the preparation of it. I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it go, Kabu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Bert. The given your own Pan-African activism and your legal activism, do you see similar legal battles taking shape in other parts of the Caribbean or the wider diaspora?
No, I remember when we took the action that Rastafarians who are brought to prison should not be trimmed. After that action was taken by me and we won, and they stopped trimming Rastafari as of the 2002, a number of Caribbean lawyers contacted me to get the papers from me, get the arguments from me, so they could lay it before their parliament and in court. And remember, we want to be the bookman of Jamaica. The bookman himself influenced that revolution, and the spirits that are down here and makes it possible that Jamaica takes the lead in some of these things. The ancestors' voices seem to be very loud in this part of the Caribbean. So yes, the question is, do other Caribbean islands, I expect them to come on board, because a lot of politicians are afraid to do what we are doing, Kabu. They feel that the population, the section of the population that thinks Obia is so evil, that they would hurt that demographic. But we think that justice is for all. That's what we think, and we don't care. So we're not seeking votes; we are seeking justice.
And this is a legal challenge. This is cold. This is a cold case. No, well, not a cold case in terms of law, but this is an objective case that is being brought. What are the next legal steps in this case, and how can the public support the effort?
All right, fine. Here we go. So the matter was filed on Friday. We are serving the Attorney General on Monday, tomorrow, with the papers. Now, the Attorney General, when he looks at it, he has an option. He can say, listen, we're not going to resist this. We are going to consent to the fact that the OBIA laws are unconstitutional. And it is my humble opinion that based on the papers filed and the history provided by Professor Clinton Hutton, kudos to you, Clinton, you came forward.
Yes.
When they read our papers, I'm confident they will say, no, this is irrefutable. This is, the Gleaner says, this is nonsense. The Gleaner newspaper says it's nonsense, not just Kabu and I. So we think that the Attorney General may, and I hope he will, not fight this one, but will say, no, I agree, it ought to be off the books.
Against that background, do you anticipate resistance, and if so, from where?
Yeah, I think there may be some misinformed church leaders who may think that we are promoting fraud and things, but it's a public education history, because white supremacy is practiced by people among us. But I think that when you look at Clinton's affidavit, and the public will make it public, where he goes through the history of our enslavement, the history of spirituality, and what it does for us, and what he said. Because one of the things he says, I'm a researcher. So if I go to talk to an Obia man and I'm in the midst of looking at his instrument as a researcher, a professor of history, I have committed a criminal offense. So it doesn't even allow research into our own culture, because the researchers have to handle these instruments. So, I think that it's a public education thing that is necessary.
What does this mean for other, because I know that the discussion on constitutional reform and the road to republic, that's a discussion that is ongoing. This is a process that is underway. But what does this mean for other colonial laws that are on the books that we don't necessarily see coming up in these conversations around the constitutional reform process, such as the Beach Management Act?
Yes, the Beach Management Act, which makes the waters on which we travel to come here as kidnapped people, that we are now kidnapped away from these beaches. That's a colonial law that is here. The practices too, the calling, opening the courts with saying, God save the king. Those are things that we must wipe out of our minds, and our Constitution must deal with that. There cannot be any reference to any person outside of the island of Jamaica, and any reverence or respect shown to them over and above the people. I wrote to the Chief Justice of Jamaica asking that we do not open the courts with God save the king, but rather with God save the people, or with all right. You don't have to have that kind of designation. In other words, the minds of Jamaican people in the courts is that you can't get justice unless you open the court in the king's name, the oppressor's name. So those are some of the colonial practices that we have to wipe from our Constitution.
So it's all roads. It's all systems go from here, because I hear you saying tomorrow the Attorney General will be served.
That's right.
And then what? So it's all systems go.
All system. I remember, Kabu, you and I have a little peeve. We know that St. Mary, the Obia men of St. Mary were chastised and targeted, and Taki was part of that. A lot of the leaders. Remember, in Clinton's affidavit, he speaks about an Obia man in 1865 after the Morant Bay Rebellion, and it comes in the report on that rebellion that his head he was beheaded and placed on a pole in Morant Square to show people that they can conquer the Obia man. The colonial powers executed him and took his head off and put it on a pole. That's a matter of historical record. It's in the report after the Morant Bay Rebellion. So what they tried to do is to use violence against the religion.
Bert, I want to thank you so much. This challenge is constitutional challenge. I think it's brilliant. I'm happy to be a part of it. Wrap up and tied up in it in all kinds.
And you provided a lot of the historical material that led to the action. Don't take yourself out of the picture. Big up the authors. You remember their names?
Yes, Diane Diakete, off the top of my head, one of the main authors. And I really want to say thanks to Professor Clinton Hutton for standing in the gap and bringing this. And I know the call was made here, and so many persons came forward.
Of course, and Tabu, remember, we are writing our history now. We have a historian from the soil.
Yes. Thank you so
And I
much.
know that Professor Vereen Shepherd, she waited for this day for a long while.
Of
Big
course,
up Vereen.
of course. Big up Prof.
St.
Shepherd.
Mary
Yes.
girl.
Of course. Chief Tachi's daughter. Thank you so much, Bert. And we'll continue this once again. This is breaking news. This is ongoing news. This is the first time you're hearing this anywhere in the world. Jamaica, a constitutional challenge here in Jamaica on the books, legally in place. The Attorney General will be served tomorrow. Bert Samuels is on this, the attorney representing Professor Clinton Hutton, a challenge to the Obia Act so many years after, from 1760 to 2025. And here we are. Thank you so much, Bert.
One love.
Give thanks.
Get up! Follow me, look up! Don't joke with Castomator Ketchup! Richer, thicker, and more affordable!
The time is...
Now, 7:31. We're standing by for our next very special guest on to speak with Dr. Darius Figueroa, social researcher and author. The books and articles he published are instances of the utilization of the liberationary methodology, which deconstructs hegemonic discourse to expose its destructive constructs vitally necessary to disrupting this discourse's ability to exercise power. His first book writing period stretched from 2002 to 2014, where he concentrated on the illicit trades of the Caribbean, with 3 books in 2004, 2006, and 2012. And this is where we want to go to. We want to go this morning to focus with Dr. Darius Figueroa on these very issues, trafficking in the Caribbean, looking at the Caribbean widely, but specifically on Jamaica. Dr. Darius Figueroa is joining us on the phone lines. Thank you so much, my brother, Darius Figueroa, for joining us live from Trinidad and Tobago, where you're currently residing. Welcome to the Africa Forum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my sister, and thank you for the invitation.
We're very happy to have you online. To welcome to our listeners from all across the 7 continents. Let me just tell you that we have been promoting this and getting the responses from our listeners, so we know people are tuned in from all across the Caribbean and from these 7 continents, people with interest in what we're about to talk about, which is trafficking in the Caribbean, which of course is your speciality. But I want to first of all start with your background, Dr. Figueroa. What got you interested in looking at the illicit trades in the Caribbean? You've got 3 books, one in 2004, 2006, and then 2012 on this. What caught your attention and got you interested in doing this academic research?
Well, what happened to me in 1969 when the Black Power Revolution hit Trinidad and Tobago, I was 15 years old.
Yes.
And I was deeply impacted by the discourse of Black Power. And what I noticed during the course of 69-70 is that whilst we were involved in this great ferment to question all that came before on the whole neo-colonial condition, at the same time we were marching in the streets and shouting power, the illicit drug trade suddenly exploded in Trinidad and Tobago, perpetrated by the Colombian Dons. And in 69-70, I said to myself, was this simply coincidence or is it deliberate?
Mm-hmm.
And from 69-70 to now, I have continued to delve into its evolution, because now we are in the 5th evolutionary stage.
And this is very interesting because I've been listening to you closely. I listened to an interview that you gave in Belize, for example, just recently. I was shocked. I mean, we have been covering a lot of this, but not from the perspective of someone like you looking through your lenses, understanding transnational organized crime in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in Belize, through a whole different lens in terms of just focusing on gangs. You connected transnational organized gangs, literally, in the Caribbean, back to transnational organized crime. And I want to come to that just to kick things off. But before we do that, can I ask you to hold for just a bit for me while I take a break and come back? To you, courtesy of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. My very special guest on the line is Dr. Darius Figueroa, and we're looking at transnational organized crime in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Dr. Darius Figueroa, this is of specific and critical importance to Jamaica. Now we're hearing in every newscast, the police high command tells us that the rise in crime, or the crime that we're seeing around us, the violent and vicious murders and killings on the island in Jamaica are connected to internal gang warfare. But you are saying that we need to understand the nature of the game. What is the nature of the game?
Well, what we must understand, firstly, all peoples of the Caribbean must understand this discourse of gangs that is presently being bandied about throughout the Caribbean was formulated in the North Atlantic, especially in the United States of America. It's a white supremacist discourse formulated to deal with the criminalization of the minority non-white races of America. So the white supremacist position is that non-white people who are inherently inferior can never create on their own initiative organized crime. All they have the mental capacity to create is gangs. Mm-hmm. So a non-white in a gang is entirely different and inferior to a white person in organized crime as the Aryan Brotherhood and the Italian Mafia. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing we must understand. Then they produce legislation that is supposed to control gangs in the United States of America, which have been a singular failure in the jurisdictions in which they were applied. Mm-hmm. Because in the United States of America, the means by which they attain the highest number of prosecutions against gang members are using not the gang act, but homicide, drug trafficking, human smuggling, etc. Mm-hmm. So it was imported into the Caribbean on the insistence of the colonial overlord that we must have gang legislation, anti-gang legislation. Mm-hmm. The political class of the Caribbean readily embraced it without critique, without criticism. What that has done now over the years is to deliberately mask the reality that there is a gangland in the Caribbean that was directly created by transnational organized crime to serve transnational organized crime. Mm-hmm. And there is no way we can understand that gangland and dismantle that gangland until we understand the transnational organized crime business model that drives that gangland.
Let us talk about...
what we must understand
yes.
in the Caribbean is that in the Caribbean today, there are two business models of transnational organized crime that are in conflict with each other. Mm-hmm. So what we have throughout the Caribbean today is no longer two ganglands, but three. Gangland under the Colombian Dons, gangland under the Mexican transnational trafficking organizations, and gangland not affiliated to either of the above.
Break them down for us, please.
Pardon?
Break them down for us, please. Help us to understand. So the three ganglands, and you say you're seeing them evolving, or at least two evolving into a third. Let us look at the business models then that you mentioned, and to break down these three different ganglands.
The Colombian business model is the oldest dominant business model of the Caribbean since the 1970s. So what has happened, it is now in its fourth evolution. Mm-hmm. So that business model has not varied much. It is extremely hierarchical. Mm-hmm. It is extremely unequal. The apex reaps all the riches and the wealth derived from the labor of the broad base. It is highly violent, indisciplined, with a penchant for recklessness. And what we must understand in the Caribbean, the Colombian paramilitary dons also believe in political agendas that must be driven by the drug traffickers to ensure the protection of the enterprise. So they are not opposed to politically destabilizing a country in which they are operating in order for them to control the state. And that is what is happening in Haiti. They have deliberately destabilized Haiti. They got rid of Jean-Bertrand Aristide and they killed President Moïse.
And so you're saying, and this is part of the wider transnational organized crime under the Colombian business model.
Yes. The Mexican model is entirely different. Entirely different. The Mexican model is premised upon a regime of discipline as a military organization. They demand military discipline within their organization. Mm-hmm. They do not sell their product to third parties. All their products are retained within the organization. They are much more equitable in the distribution of wealth amongst their members. And they have an entirely different menu of products and activities from the Colombians. So the Mexicans concentrate on synthetic drugs, not plant-based drugs. And they are at the leading edge of 21st century innovation with their cyber security capacity to assault databases, to capture identities, to loot it. So they are not into this old jam and wine business model. Mm-hmm. They are highly technologically sophisticated at the leading edge of the 21st century AI innovation process. So they are constantly evolving.
I want to come back and look at and spend some time on that, but also to look at what have you found within the Jamaican context? Is it the Colombian business model, a Mexican, or we're moving into something else? Let me take a quick turn. My very special guest online is Dr. Darius Figueroa. And please check his books, because there are many books. We're going to be telling you about them later on. He's been doing the research on this for many years. He's gone really deep into what's happening in the Caribbean, why we are where we are, and who are the main players. Dr. Figueroa, let's talk about Figueroa, because we do have Figueroa on the island here. What yes. is it, in understanding the Jamaican context, what business model have you seen evolving over time?
All right. Well, today, presently, Jamaica is in transition. I term the Mexican model Pax Mexicana. Pax Mexicana is present and alive in Jamaica, along with the model of the Colombian dons. What we must understand, the initial militias on the ground that serve the politicians of Jamaica was soon embraced by the Colombian Dons, and they became independent of the political back and forth by going into the illicit trades. So there was a specific evolution in Jamaica that is unique, where you have groups in Jamaica affiliated to the Colombian Dons evolved into transnational organized crime status in themselves and continued to flirt with the politicians whilst they were drug traffickers in their own right. The change in the Jamaican reality began from the time, show your mind back in Jamaica, to when the violence broke out in Montego Bay. When the violence broke out of its traditional environment in Kingston and the areas around Kingston and migrated north to Montego Bay, that was the signal to those of us who understand the conflicting business models that the counter model had now arrived, because Montego Bay is the command and control center of the illicit trades in Jamaica.
And so the counter model arriving to challenge the Colombian model, which was, if you backtrack a bit and help us to understand that old model, and then this counter model that arrived, and the signal to those who know was when that, because we were wondering about it, you see. It was the strangest thing on the island, that violence that broke out in Montego Bay. But I hear you putting this in context to say this was a gang, a transnational organized crime operatives literally fighting for turf on the island.
Yes, what happens is that the Mexicans come in and they start to recruit sets from gangland that they need, because the Mexicans have a preference for gangland. Since they do not sell their product to third parties, the Mexicans don't deal with the drug trafficking oligarchs of the Caribbean. Their preference is to build their organization from the ground up by recruiting the very best, the creme de la creme of the sets that they find on the island. So from the time the process started, where persons are now walking out from organizations under the Colombian Dons that are at war with each other, and they are crossing over into the Mexican discipline, and the war ends under the discipline of the Mexicans. And nobody is no longer, former enemies are now brothers in arms, creating a brand new organization. And the Colombian Dons and their organizations react to that by attacking them. It's the same thing happened in the United States of America. That is why South Central LA and Eastern LA has now gone quiet, because of the same process of recruitment and transformation of gangland in America.
So that the transformation is, you're saying this, the new business model is now under Pax, what you call Pax Mexicana, and that is, so this conflict, who's winning this war?
Well, you see, in Jamaica, there are different levels of the war. There continues to be killing within the ring-fenced communities of the marginalized people. And then there continues to be the war between the sets who walked away and those who are still under the Colombian Don discipline, and they must prosecute the war. But what you must understand is that what the Pax Mexicana is in Jamaica for is entirely different from what the Colombian Dons are there for, because the strategy, the Caribbean strategy of Pax Mexicana is entirely different.
Yes.
Because Pax Mexicana has control of Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
And Puerto Rico is their gateway to the eastern seaboard of the United States. And that is where Jamaica is now being pulled into the vortex. Because remember, there is a pipeline that connects Jamaica to Honduras.
Mm-hmm. And by pipeline, you mean?
So,
a drug pipeline?
a trafficking route.
A trafficking route, would it be drug, human?
A trafficking route, yes. That in the game we call it a pipeline.
Yes.
Because it's back and forth, dual flow.
Mm-hmm.
The next involvement of Jamaica, we must understand, is the connection of Jamaica to Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica has now been integrated into the business model in Haiti.
And
Jamaica's...
Go ahead.
Yeah, and Jamaica's transnational organized crime big contribution to the business model in Haiti is teaching the Haitians the ganja game. And now in the island of Hispaniola, it is Haitians who control the ganja game in the Dominican Republic.
There's an interesting relationship developing between Jamaica and the Dominican Republic, which boggles the mind. We can't, as for those of us as deep thinkers, critical thinkers, and investigative journalists, we're trying to find answers, and it's a handful, to this burgeoning, evolving new relationship where visas requirement, for example, that has been taken away. Now Dominicans can come right into Jamaica. There's also a real body-body relationship between the heads of state, and there's a whole new mushrooming relationship between Jamaica and the Dominican Republic that we do not understand. But I hear you saying that there's a wider context. I heard you say well there, Dr. Figueroa. You said, well, this should be understood within what context?
Yes, because what you must understand, the Dominican Republic is the last stand of the Colombian Dons in the Caribbean archipelago. And it is under assault from Pax Mexicana. The Dominican Republic has always been the command and control center of the Colombian Dons in the Caribbean, going all the way back to the Medellin Federation. And now it is under assault. And one perfect way to assault it is Haiti is next to the DR. And the drug trafficking oligarchy of the Dominican Republic has extensive business interests in Haiti. So the Dominican Republic has the imperative now to reach out, to look for friends, because their overlord is being strangled. Because what has happened to their overlord is that he has lost the last vestige of his presence in the United States illicit market was the eastern seaboard of America, and he has lost it. Pax Mexicana has evicted him. So he has now turned to Europe, and they are turning the Dominican Republic into the number one entrepot shipping point for cocaine into the European Union. Dominican Republic has been transformed from getting shipments to then moving to America, and they are now getting shipments and now moving to Europe. And the entire Eastern Caribbean is now looking towards Europe, not America, because remember, Pax Mexicana destroyed the cocaine market of America with fentanyl and methamphetamine, synthetic drugs. So now they have to go to Europe and dump all the cocaine, because right now in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, there are mountains of coca leaves rotting on the ground. There is no market.
And the reason for this is this new evolving Pax Mexicana that you're talking about, which is still transnational organized crime. I would want to help us to understand Pax Mexicana and how what's the business model and how it functions.
Pax Mexicana was a creation. What we must all understand in the Caribbean is that without the Mexican investment, there would have been no Colombian cocaine trade. Mexicans were always behind the creation of Medellin Federation, Cali, all of them. Because Mexican money and the Mexican crossing points into America were the chief smuggling points into America. But when the Colombians changed their business model from being horizontally integrated, where they control from production to retail sales, and decided to wholesale their kilo bricks, there were Mexican backers who walked away and set up their own organization, whereas there were Mexicans who continued to run with the Colombian dons, people like El Chapo.
Mm-hmm.
So this distinct Mexican model is very much similar to what obtained in the early days with Medellin and Cali, but even much more disciplined, much more rigorous, and much more technologically innovative.
Mm-hmm.
So what has happened is that this business model is driven by a discourse of race termed La Raza.
La Raza.
This is La Raza, an anti-colonial, anti-neocolonial discourse which is insist that we, the native people of Mexico, has been ravished and trampled by hundreds of years of domination by the gringo. All the gringo has afforded us is the illicit trades. They have underdeveloped us, plagued us with arrested development, assaulted our non-white cells with their white supremacist assault. We have all then grasped what we have been given, the illicit trades, and we will develop the illicit trades to its maximum extent to bring down massa.
Mm-hmm. You know, we heard a similar argument coming out of Montego Bay at the beginning of the violence that was linked back to cybersecurity issues, scamming and so on, using the internet. And what we heard from the scammers, which is what they're called in Jamaica, is that this was reparations. It is sounding very similar to what you're telling us the Pax Mexicana model is.
And they have their own belief system. It is called Santa Muerte.
Santa Merce.
Yes, Saint Death. They have their own belief system. They have their own brujos and brujas.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own cosmology.
We're seeing it in Jamaica.
Yes. And when you see it in practice on the ground, certain practices, you see the practices of Santa Muerte when they take out an enemy and then visit his grave, dig it up, expose the body and do their ritual on the body.
We're seeing it in Jamaica.
They also have the practice of taking heads.
We're seeing it in Jamaica.
They will take your head. Because they are not recklessly violent. They are cold and calculating.
So this is a new model. It's not the Colombian model. This is very interesting because I can hear the collective gasp across the island of Jamaica because you just described what we are experiencing.
Yes. And in the United States of America, gangland in the United States of America is mortally afraid of them. Mortally afraid of them. They speak about the Mexicans and they literally shake.
You've said that this is also a very well-disciplined and well-organized federation, if you will. Because you're saying these are not cartels, these are federations.
Yes.
You've also tied them into the fourth industrial revolution. Innovation.
Yes.
Expound upon that first.
From the outset, they are insisting that they must be leading edge. So from the outset, with their formation in the days when they were working with the Colombians and the cocaine, they would take their children and send them to the best business schools in the world. They believe in central planning. They believe in the fact that this is a business that must constantly generate and accumulate wealth. So that is why they are always on the leading edge, of developing synthetic drugs. They are producing derivatives of fentanyl that the legislative bodies of the North Atlantic don't even have time to catch up with them and declare them to be illegal. And they are right there in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic producing the fentanyl derivatives. And this is not my conjecture. This is a statement of the U.S. Homeland Security that they have sounded the alarm that the DR is now an offshore fentanyl derivative production base in the Caribbean for export to Puerto Rico and America. There's fentanyl in Trinidad and Tobago, and I show you, if you go and look in Jamaica, there's fentanyl there.
So
that is the business model.
So we find the Colombians in a state of crisis?
Yes, and that is why they are so recklessly and mindlessly violent, because their business model has collapsed. The Mexicans taught the Afghans how to manufacture industrial grade amphetamine, what you call ice. They also taught the Afghans how to extract fentanyl from opium paste. So the Afghans are no longer taking their opium paste and turning it into heroin. They are now turning it into plant-based fentanyl derivatives and flooding the world with it.
And I hear you say...
They have taught the Nigerian traffickers how to produce ice. And now the Nigerian traffickers are major producers of ice in the world and smugglers.
And we hear coming out of Ghana right now that they too are battling in a serious way with the influx of these kinds of criminal activities on the west coast of Africa, yes. Ghana in particular. There is if you could look at the Caribbean water for us and connect it back to Africa. And I know I'm asking you to do something which is just going to be words, but we all can, Google our Jamaica, on the map and our Jamaica in relation to West Africa, and help us to understand what that whole network is like. Who is sending to who? Why is Jamaica so strategic? Why is Belize so strategic? And how Honduras is involved?
Well, what we have to understand is that the island archipelago are simply stop-off points on the way to the consumer nations of the North Atlantic. And you will have a series of stop-off points by which you can mask the flow of your product to maximize your effort to beat interdiction. So you will not have a single pipeline. You will have multiple pipelines. And you will have primary and secondary transition points. So there are primary transition points in the Caribbean, there are secondary transition points in the Caribbean, and there are transition points waiting to be awaited. because the apparatus is already on the ground. And when strategy dictates, they go into these two-tier markets and awaken them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a strategic play. What you must understand, West Africa, the move from the Caribbean to West Africa is nothing new.
Yes.
What is new now is the linking of Brazil to West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a series of West African states that are now under the control of the traffickers. The latest one being the Ivory Coast. So the problem in Ghana is because Ghanaian transnational organized crime is part of that trafficking network a long time ago, just as Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
They are fully embraced by transnational organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
And transnational organized, the two business models are present.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I could tell you, my sister, since the decade of the 1990s, the Mexicans were in Africa doing the research to set up offshore cocaine production platforms in Africa by growing the coca bush in Africa and turning it into cocaine, powdered cocaine to ship to Europe. They were in the Democratic Republic of Congo with their agronomists putting the plants down in the ground and creating hybrids to create that platform. Mm-hmm. That is how long this process has been ongoing. They have since squashed that because they have replaced it with synthetic drugs. But the synthetic drugs are flooding Africa. There is still the overland route of product from West Africa to North Africa to Libya and from Libya to Europe. There's still that old route.
Mm-hmm. And so that we can
primary route now.
Yes, go ahead.
The primary route now is from Brazil, Eastern Caribbean, across. You go by way of West Africa, then you go to the Canary Islands, you drop off in the Canary Islands, or you head straight to Galicia in Spain and you drop off. Whereas the Mexicans, they take their product into the Mediterranean and into the Black Sea and up along the North Sea into Germany and Scandinavia. Because Pax Mexicana in Europe is partnered with the most powerful transnational organized crime groups in Europe, like the Ndrangheta. So they have literally squeezed the Colombian entry into Europe. Literally squeezed them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to the Netherlands today, the Netherlands is the Druglandia of Europe. And the violence in the Netherlands is mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that when we see, so there is a disruption, and you can, after studying for a while, you know what's at play in terms of how the different business models impact the social order. For example, in Belize, in Haiti, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Jamaica.
Well, in Jamaica and in the rest of the Caribbean, you always, if you monitor gangland, the first reality you will see is that within gangland, the change within gangland, certain groups now begin to change in nature. They become very, very disciplined. The recklessness is over, and they begin to show the wealth that they are creating and amassing on the ground. Their members begin, their quality of life dramatically increases. their families, the quality of life dramatically increases. You see the wealth that is past the foot soldiers of the organization, literally changing the lifestyle of the group, unlike the Colombians. And that is the first sign of the change on the ground. The next sign in the change of the ground as Pax Mexicana business model takes hold over specific spaces is the improvement in the life of the persons in the spaces Pax Mexicana controls. Because they begin the process now of raising the living standard of the persons within the spaces they dominate through various means by which they encourage means to generate income within the community that circulates in the community and stays in the community. The most potent one device that we have seen roll out in the United States and in Brazil is ghetto tourism.
Mm-hmm. So we see
so
that
you come into the ghetto safe. While you are there, your safety is assured. You dance, you prance, you get what you want, you do what you want, and you leave safe. And you see the change within the community. And in the context of the zinc-fence marginalized spaces of Jamaica, people readily embrace this new business model because of what it gives back to the community.
This is frightening.
Unlike the Colombians.
You know, this is frightening, Brother Darius, and I'm telling you why this is frightening. Because obviously this is your life's work. You're an academic. You're a former lecturer at the University of the West Indies. This is your life's work. So you know what you're saying. You've done the research and you continue to do the ongoing research. But so much of what you're saying resonating with us here on the island of Jamaica, especially within the Pax Mexicana context, that I find it frightening. I am going to take a break. And I am going to, let me take a break. I'll come back. Hold the line for me, please, Brother Darius. And we just have about 10 minutes to go. So I'm going to just pose a question and then have you talk us through this in terms of how then do we even begin to address this? Who are so we see local players, and yes, we're seeing the wealth. Yes, the wealth is open. We're very aware of what's happening there. And we're experiencing some of the violence in terms of the heads taken, et cetera, et cetera. I don't even want to go over all of these things. But we are experiencing what you have described as the evolving business model of Pax Mexicana on the island. Where do we go from here? How do we begin to address this? Is this a politician thing? Is this a military thing, a police thing, a security, private sector? How do we even begin to address this?
Well, from the outset, it must be understood that Pax Mexicana has no political agenda. They don't bribe politicians. Anybody in the state apparatus who is strategically important to them, they turn you into a drug trafficker. You must be part of the organization. And remember, in Pax Mexicana's organization, if you are part of the organization, they hold a close member of your family hostage. So the message to the politicians is that we move into the spaces of the marginalized, they target the spaces of the marginalized, they target gangland, and we intend to win their hearts and minds. So we are not coming as a violent occupying force as the Colombian does. We intend to become organic with the masses. And the masses in turn will become one with us. So if you continue to have this old, failed attitude towards dealing with marginalized people, with intervening into the lives and spaces of marginalized people and understanding what is the reason for the marginalization and discriminating in their favor to end it. Pax Mexicana is going to do it for you, and you would not like the outcome, because eventually what the outcome will be in Jamaica is that they will move uptown, as what is already happening in Trinidad, because in Trinidad everybody knows well where to go uptown and get what they want. So this invisible barrier that is police between uptown and downtown in Jamaica will soon collapse, because they will now move uptown to get what they want. And that is, so this long time relationship in Jamaica where you police the barrier between uptown and downtown and you leave downtown in their misery, that is now being dismantled by Pax Mexicana. Look at how it is being dismantled in Haiti. And that is the lesson for the politicians of Jamaica to learn. That is a new era and time for a new politics.
What would this new politics look like?
Pardon?
What would this new politics look like?
Well, they will have to go back and learn from Michael Manley. That is a starting point.
But
that is the reality.
Yeah, but you have suffered a whole lot, personal to your own, your ability to earn, your ability to practice your scholarship as a result of your research and what you have been making available to Caribbean people, Latin American people on a whole. Talk to us about that, because you have suffered some serious consequences.
Well, what has happened to me is that I am simply too bold in what I speak publicly and what I write and publish publicly. So what happened to me is that there is a concerted effort that I must never work in Trinidad and Tobago. So I have not worked since the 1st of January 2015. I have never, ever worked in Trinidad after they got rid of me from UWI St. Augustine. Governments come, governments go. I offer my services, no takers.
And yet
they have done their endeavor best in destroying my PhD. Feel free. Mm-hmm. It is now coming to 2 decades my PhD is under examination at the university.
And yet you have you have become a resource person internationally to persons from all over the world who have reached out to you, having read your work.
There are more persons who come and find me from the North Atlantic than persons who come and find me from successive governments of Trinidad and Tobago.
So there is. Do you feel? Well, obviously, 2 decades. Are you aware, or do you know that there is a deliberate strategy to silence you? Maybe not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but Caribbean wide. Considering we're talking also about the University of the West Indies.
I don't expect to be welcomed by no regime in the Caribbean. Maybe I will be welcome in Cuba. I don't know. But I don't expect no open arms.
And then one of the things is because your scholarship, you have tied politicians, private sector, minorities within the Caribbean as being deeply situated and leading, if not leading, the transnational organized crime over time since the 90s.
Yes. arising from the second half of the decade of the 1990s when the Colombians changed their business model. The most powerful Caribbean oligarchs we have today are all drug traffickers, and they are all from minority races. So we don't have African oligarchs in the Caribbean, African oligarchs who are drug traffickers. They are all from the minority races.
Because one of the things
they have reached...
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. And they have reached that position of power in the Caribbean because of their drug trafficking. No if, but no maybe.
You see, because...
So it's a built-in racist division of labor that works in the Caribbean to the detriment of the African people.
I want to continue my conversation with you, if you don't mind. And I noticed that wherever you go, you're asked to come back. I noticed that in Belize, you've been asked to come every first Tuesday, every first Sunday in the month, in each month for how long? And I understand why, having this conversation with you, that we've just really begun to, this is like an introduction. We really do have to go deeper. Yes. I want to hear more about Pax Mexicana and also your kind of go through some of what you've already written. Persons online are asking about your books. There are so many books that you've written, but in terms of Jamaica, I'll just say quickly to our listeners, Cocaine and Heroin Trafficking in the Caribbean, The Case of Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica and Guyana. That is one. Is there any other that our Jamaican audience can quickly tap into? But the questions are coming from all over the world, actually.
No.
Okay.
I am not added to, but I intend to, as long as I'm alive, that book with Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica and Guyana, to revise it by updating. I'll update Jamaica.
Yes.
I'll bring Jamaica up to Pax Mexicana.
Yes. We're looking forward to that, and we'll definitely be reaching out to you again, Brother Darius Figueroa, to kind of break this down some more and to focus more, to zoom in more now on Jamaica. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yes.
This was eye-opening. This was insightful. This was really, it's frightening, it's shocking, but it's eye-opening at the same time.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, my brother. And, the police, the JCF is saying, the St. Catherine South Police are saying that they cannot confirm that a body found in the division on Saturday is that of the missing university student. And they go on to say that, and this is, I'm reading this now from the Jamaica Observer. It says, the St. Catherine South Police say they cannot confirm that a body found in the division Saturday afternoon is that of missing University of Technology student Anissa Dilworth. The body, which is in an advanced state of decomposition, was found in Portmore. Dilworth, 20, reportedly went missing on Tuesday, May 6, and has not been seen since. The commanding officer for St. Catherine South, Superintendent Leighton Gray, told the Jamaica Observer that he could not confirm that the body the police found was that of Dilworth. So that's what we're getting from the Jamaica Observer there. Also, just to quickly say that, so we're getting lots of news about an attack in Burkina Faso. This happened over a few days ago. There is an Al-Qaeda-led terrorist group that's operating in the Sahel, in the AES, in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. JNIM, Jamaat al-Muslim, I'll tell you the name in a while. So this is Al-Qaeda. This is Al-Qaeda. This is what they called, this is what was created by the United States and the Allied forces, and they called it Al-Qaeda in the Sahel. Remember? Well, they're wreaking havoc across the Sahel, and they're killing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in Mali, in Niger, and in Burkina Faso. They are heavily funded. We'll talk about, we have been talking about them for a while. There is news of 100 Burkinabe soldiers who were killed, 200 who were killed. And JNIM, they've taken credit for that. Although the BBC is reporting it the other way around by saying that these soldiers were killed by Ibrahim Traore. The BBC is doing this for their own reasons. I won't get into that. But JNIM is operating in that region, and they have been operating there for a while, and this is Al-Qaeda in the Sahel. Also, on that very same vein, you notice that Donald Trump was in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and, all of the almost all of them, for about 5 days last week. He met with the Syrian president. The man who he met with, who is the president of Syria now, after they got rid of Assad, and remember, Israel got rid of Assad. America did that with Israel and all of that. This is a long story, but not so long. Long and short, they got rid of Assad. They put in their own man. This man who's in is also Al-Qaeda. He doesn't hide it. He has never hid it. This man is Al-Qaeda. Google him name. Look at him before. This is Al-Qaeda who has now taken off his turban, put on a suit, and shave him beard, and cut him beard neat. But he's Al-Qaeda. So the fact that the head of Syria is Al-Qaeda, JNIM is wreaking havoc with impunity in the Sahel, it tells you a whole lot. And Donald Trump was in the region shaking hand with the head of Al-Qaeda, one of the heads of Al-Qaeda, who took over from Osama bin Laden, who is now the president of Syria, shaking hands with the prime minister. This is what my brother would call Overton window. JABEM, Jamaica Beach Right Environmental Movement. He's a senior biomedical research scientist in immunology, working in the biopharmaceutical industry. He holds a BSc from the University of the West Indies in biochemistry, an MA from City University of New York, City College in biochemistry, and he gained a PhD from the Graduate City Center, University of New York, in biochemistry, immunology, B-cell biology, and the regulation of autoreactive cells in the autoimmune disease, lupus. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Greetings, Cabo.
Greetings.
Doing well?
Greetings.
Good. You are well?
I am well if you two are well. Thank you so much. I know we're the program is so packed this morning, as you can very well tell, and so we have just a few minutes to 9 o'clock. But what I wanted to do was to kind of get an update from you first about what, because you're representing JABEM this morning, even though we went through the whole biology and so on, which is to say that there is a new situation that's unfolding on the island. We spoke about it before, where a hotel, it's also in the news now, so we can say it is Sandals Group, they actually called what was it they called recently? A meeting for persons to come ask them questions and so on regarding plans they have for overwater housing that is building in the sea. What can you tell us about how that meeting went and what really is the plan that Sandals have?
So I would say the meeting went very well for the people of the country in terms of how our people really resented what was being presented to them. So the resistance have started from the people. What Sandals is presenting to the people of Montego Bay and to the country at large is a continuation of their business model to build hotel rooms in the sea. Now, we know that the coastline of Jamaica right now, we only have 0.6% public access to it, right? And most of it is being used by the tourism industry to build their hotels, which becomes exclusive zones, right? Now the model is moving to the sea. And Sandals is now projecting to build, their hotel's room into the sea. They're projecting to build 18 overwater bungalow, right? That will take up around 2.4 acres of the sea. And that would represent, right, an appropriation of a part of the sea. They're taking it away from the Jamaican people, right, to expand for personal interest, for personal gain. And so they presented their plans as to what they want to do there, right, in terms of the building of their hotel, the environmental impact assessment, which is required on a Jamaican law right now. And if you're going to build in the sea, they employ these companies that does these kind of work, right? They are companies that will look at the harm that will be done to the space. They will look at the socio-economic component of it, right? They'll look at the laws that regulate this space, and then it's presented to the public and then get public feedback, which will then go to NEPA to say, should this project go or should this project be cancelled, right? So the community raised many concerns around this. And that is where I think we're at right now. We have a 21-day window in which the country must submit, their argument as to why this project should not go on. And, we're at a critical juncture right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we are there because if we allow the sea now, right, which is actually Crown Waters, and it's something that the Jamaican people must understand, that we're interpreting these Crown Waters as it's the Crown is holding these waters in trust for the Jamaican people. So you can't really own it, right? But if these models continue to proliferate in Jamaica, then the ownership, right, would shift to these multinational corporations. And so we will lose out because we have these... Go ahead.
As far as you know, do we have this model of building houses or hotel rooms, cottages over water? So this is a proposal from Sandals now for a particular area in Flankers, I think. So is this something that has been done before on the island? Do we have other hotels doing this or private people building, in the sea like this? Or would this be the first for Jamaica?
No, this is not the first in Jamaica. Sandals actually built the first one in 2015. Sandals Royal Caribbean, also in Montego Bay, right? They have built also Sandals South Coast in West Ballon. We have Princess Senses, the Mangrove in Anova, all right? We have a document submitted to NEPA now by a company called Offshore Oasis Limited to build an overwater structure in the coast of Lilliput. So they are expanding in the country. So Sandals was very entwined in this because it was their idea to introduce this into the Jamaican tourism product. And so they have also been instrumental in crafting the legislation that allow them to do this. And this is very, very important, because Jamaica does not have any laws that we know of. We're exploring it. We have not seen any laws, any regulation written, right? What we have come upon is what is a guideline. Only a guideline exists, and this guideline is dated for 2016. So it's almost 10 years that it exists in guideline form that is regulating overwater structures. And that is unacceptable.
Overwater is one thing, but who owns it? So you've already, because of the Beach Management Act, right, which is steeped in colonial law, that's coming out from the colonial period, and it is still being widely used in Jamaica. Legally you can take you can buy the beach and you can lock it off from the entire Jamaica. But we've always felt, and some of the conversations that we've had here, that you still have the right to access the water if you come from sea. Because they're not going to allow you to walk through their land because they claim this land as their own private land, so them lock it off, you can't walk there. But I've always felt that if you take a boat or you drop from the sky through a helicopter, you can land in water and that you have every right to do that. So is that not so?
It is so, right? The sea, right? The water is Crown property, right? And it's held in trust. Right, so it is that you cannot own it. But what we are seeing here, yes, is that if you start building permanent structures in the sea, now the shoreline is, you can't own the beach either. The beach, right, and the floor of the sea is vested in the crown. So you can't own it. And so what we're seeing happening, yes, NEPA is allowed to give beach license. And those licenses sometimes are exclusive that locks us out of walking along these beaches. But what we're seeing now, as I said, there's no law that now exists in Jamaica that deals with this space as to how we're going to treat the crown waters. But what we are seeing, yes, is that these hotels now will build there and you cannot go in these spaces. And we need to understand those. We have requested, through access to information, from the National Land Agency, trying to understand what are the terms, under which these entities are able to sequester, to appropriate these parts of the sea. Because, it may violate, rules that are set up under the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea. And these things, we must see them in order to examine them. And right now, we do not have those regulations in place. It's just guidelines in place. So we have, the framework is very limited. But it would represent changing laws and changing regulation without a full discussion in Parliament, without the Jamaican people being involved in a discussion to say, well, we're going to start giving you see, and you have nothing to say about this. We're going to do it. That is very, very troubling right now.
And this, of course, has happened in many places already, some of which you just named. So what's the next step from here?
Well, we are doing quite a bit in terms of requesting information from the government to get more clarity, right? I think what the public can do right now, the public needs to respond to this EIA. And they need to respond and give their reasons as to why is it that this structure should not be built in the sea, right? Because I think in the end, it will show us that this thing is going to violate our rights, and it is representing the appropriation of the sea, which should not be acceptable because this goes against the principle of freedom of the sea. It goes against the principle that the sea is the common heritage of humankind. And if we now start the proliferation of this model across the island, then we will lose the sea. And if we lose this sea, we are losing a big part of our heritage.
Is there a question that Sanders and others have to answer in regard to when others access the sea by boat through the sea and come upon these structures in the sea? What are their rights in terms of it would be Sandals and the other hotels then who would have been in breach, so that if you access from sea and come upon these structures, you have every right to be there. Is Sandals and the other hotels answering that question?
Well, Kabu, I would say that it is our government who must set these regulations, right? That puts the limit on the entity that is erecting these structures. And this is why the laws and the regulation needs to be put in place, because we know of our right.
But them erect already. You see what we're saying, Dr. Taylor, is that them erect already. So for those that already standing erect, if we come upon them, I won't finish a sentence that I was going to ask. If can we, what we can do with them? But I cannot believe that.
Well, we don't want them bunny off of the ear, right? So we'll have that one in private. But
yes.
No, you cannot enter these spaces. These are private spaces. No, that body of water, where if that 2.4 acre is built in the sea, you can't go there unless you appear, right? Because the government gives them the permission to do so. The Jamaican government has given them the permission to build there, right? And
it's a permission that is in contravention of, as you quoted just now, the law of the sea, even the Beach Management Act itself, from what I am understanding of it. Am I wrong?
Well, it's tricky because, the section that they're building in, right, is called territorial waters. And under UNCLOS, territorial water allows the state, it gives the state sovereign rights in this area. And it allows the states to build structures over water in this area, right? But there are still rules and guidelines that they must follow. They can't block shipping lanes, right? That is, you'd violate what they call innocent passage of transit. They can't do that, right? Can they block fishing lanes that fishermen have been using? Can they block fishing grounds that fishermen have been using? Can they harm the ecology by, endangering species there? No, they can't do that because there are other articles. It's over 361 articles that situate within UNCLOS that you have to really kind of interpret when you are doing these kinds of things. Right, so even though this is Jamaican territorial water where they have sovereign right over it and they are allowed to build structures in it, Jamaica need to put the regulations in place to clearly define, right, what are the rights of the Jamaican people in this space. Given that it is crown water which is held in trust for its people, so nobody don't own it. Nobody don't own the sea, That's very, very clear. And that's the point. Right? It's a common heritage of humankind. I'm totally out of time. I'd like to say also that at some point we're going to have to define the Jamaican in the context of everything. Thank you so much. We have to. Yes. We have to. But, Kabu, I want to leave with one thing. There's this email address, applications@nepa.gov.jm. And I'm asking Jamaicans to write to NEPA at applications@nepa.gov.jm and state their reason as to why this project should not be built in our sea. Thank you so much, Dr. Devon Taylor. We'll pick this up and continue the conversation as time goes on. Thank you so much, my brother. Yeah, man, give that. All right. There's some serious things happening in our country. Serious against the people of Jamaica. We're going to have to stop and take stock, look again, and see what's happening around us. All right. I want to go back to the phone line to speak with my next very special guest, who is urologist Dr. Marie Brown, and going to talk about men's health and the men's health fair that's coming up. I'm not seeing her right now, so let me know what's happening. We're standing by for Dr. Marie Brown, urologist. And while we're doing that, I'm sure that I have one or two things to say, but we've been having a really packed program. And let me know if we've got Dr. Marie Brown online. So just reminding you that tomorrow is Malcolm X's day. 100 years of Malcolm X tomorrow. All right, let me go to the phone lines where urologist Dr. Marie Brown is online. Dr. Brown, good morning. How are you doing?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am well, if you two are well.
Lovely.
All right. I know that we've talked before, and we don't have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to go straight to the point of, have you noticed any change in the way Jamaican men are now accessing or reaching out for health care? Because we always say, this is a thing in Jamaica that we say a lot, that man no like go a doctor. Have we noticed any change over time? Is it good or bad?
I've noticed a lot of changes. Men are actively seeking help now. They're actively coming out wanting to check their prostate. And also the numbers from our health fair, we started in 2022. Mm-hmm. At that time, we screened 162 men. Mm-hmm. By 2023, that had increased to 251. Right. Mm-hmm. And by 2024, we saw 317 men. Okay. So there is some traction, and men are actively seeking out, even at the hospital where I work and privately as well. Mm-hmm. They actually do come out now and they want to know more. So it has been a really good effort so far. All right, brilliant. What does a urologist do? So a urologist is a surgeon who treats conditions relating to the urinary tract for both male and females, as well as the genital tract for men. So anything relating to the kidneys, the urethra, the bladder, for men and women, and for the prostate, the penis, the testicles, and everything else in between. For men, that is what we do.
What are some of the diseases that are connected to all of that system? The kidneys, the urethra,
Right. So anything can happen. So whether it be trauma from motor vehicle accident that can damage the kidneys, the bladder, the penis, the testicles, even prostate injuries can happen as well. And from gunshot wounds, which is quite common in Jamaica, infections to these areas, stones, kidney stones from the kidney can move into the ureters. That's a tube connecting the kidney to the bladder. Bladder stones in men who have a very large prostate and they have obstruction to urine flow, they can develop bladder stones. So we treat that as well. And the cancers of the kidneys, the ureters, the bladder, the prostate, the penis, the testicle, that all falls in the scope of urology practice. And the big one is, BPH or benign prostatic hyperplasia, which is just an enlargement of the prostate that is not cancerous, and that too can lead to obstruction to urine flow or stoppage of water, as we call it in Jamaica.
What about other diseases connected to the kidneys itself?
So, like in
diabetes.
Right. So we don't necessarily treat diabetes and hypertensive renal disease or kidney disease. That's the nephrologist, the medical arm of internal medicine. So they would treat that aspect of it. But we are the ones who would perform renal transplant for patients who have end-stage renal disease. We would be the ones to do the renal transplant. We would also participate in dialysis fistula formation for hemodialysis, along with the general surgeons, but we would do some of that as well.
And in terms of because when we say urologist, so many people think immediately of the prostate, and we want to talk about the health fair. But so the fair itself, you'll be looking at all of this, or you're specifically looking at diseases or men's health generally, and not just a wide spectrum that would include females?
Right. So it's actually men's health. And the reason for starting that was for the reason we stated before, that men do not like going to the doctors and men do not take care of their health. So we provide this environment for them to come in. They have their blood sugar testing done, cholesterol, blood pressure. We also do HIV testing as well. And of course, we focus a lot on prostate cancer screening, where we'll do their digital rectal examination as well as their PSA, prostate-specific antigen on that day. Everything is...
Do we still need to do the digital rectal examination? Because I know this is one of the things that men are afraid of, I don't want to do, to determine what's happening with the prostate?
Absolutely. That is still included. There are other tests coming on board now to supplement the investigations, but that is still included in the screening process. And surprisingly, there is somewhat of an abandonment of the fear of doing the digital rectal examination.
Okay.
Because I've had patients who have come to me and said, Doc, I'll never do that. It is painful. It is horrible. And having educated them and having, a good conversation with them, they agreed. And they're like, but it's not as bad as people say it is.
Yeah.
So that notion of it being painful and a horrible exam and it will turn them into homosexuals, that is actually going out the
door. That whole stigma is getting less. I'm so happy to hear that.
I'm hearing that less and less from men each year, and they actually do want to have it done.
Brilliant. What's the prevalence of prostate cancer now in Jamaica? Because, over the years, and I think even the last time we spoke, Jamaica was the country with the highest prevalence rate of prostate.
And it is still quite high.
Are we still a leading country with that?
Well, not really. We're not the leading. one, but we have one of the highest in the world.
Wow.
So for us in 2022, I think we had close to, in terms of new cases, we had 1,500, almost 1,600 new cases. And the current incidence of prostate cancer in Jamaica, think about 100,000 men. If you line up 100,000 men, about 85.7, but think about 86 men would have it of that 100,000. And when you look at other cancers such as breast or cervix, it's far less than prostate cancer.
So it's still an epidemic.
It still is. And when you look at the death rate as well, prostate cancer has the highest death rate in Jamaica. So of these men, 37 of them will die compared to other cancers that are less than prostate cancer. It is still quite common.
Can it be prevented? How do you prevent it?
Well, we don't have preventative measures just as yet because there are a lot of factors that are involved in the development of prostate cancer, and we're not like 100% sure yet of what exactly will lead a man to get prostate cancer. But what we do know is that as they increase in age, which we cannot stop, and just being a man, being a black man, which we cannot stop, these are factors that increase the risk of prostate cancer. So the only way to prevent it basically is not to have a prostate, but we can't do that because it's a prostate, and the prostatic fluid that it provides is actually important for nourishment of the sperm and for procreation. So we can't stop that. But in terms of early detection, which is what we are promoting, that actually helps to reduce the incidence of the death rate actually and progression of the disease. Because say, for example, a man is diagnosed with prostate cancer now, and treatment is offered now, this man can live for 10, 15, 20 years or more without having a recurrence. But if nothing is done, they will surely have progression, and this progression will lead to spread or metastatic disease and ultimately death.
And so once you do, and this is why you say, do the prostate test, check your prostate, how often and beginning when?
All right, so we start at age 40 years old, and it is done annually at most times. But for some men, if they have a very normal feeling prostate, their PSAs are extremely low for their age group, then sometimes we say you can come back in 2 years. And if at 2 years it's still quite low, then we can put them on for another 2 years. But most times we do say that men should come in annually. And sometimes what I've found as well over the past couple of years, for men that have put on 2 years, they have forgotten. And then they come back 3 years later and say, Doc, I couldn't remember when. That also helps to keep them on a 1 year schedule, so that way they won't miss.
What are the symptoms of problems with the prostate, and what are some of these problems?
All right, so just to state off the bat, for prostate cancer, initially there are no symptoms. They don't feel anything at all. But when you get to the advanced stages, that is where the symptoms develop. However, an enlarged prostate can also cause these same symptoms that I'm going to highlight now. So they may have difficulty passing urine. They may go to the bathroom and realize that the urine flow doesn't start right away. They have to wait a couple seconds for the urine flow to start. They might notice that it doesn't flow that strong, or they have what we call interrupted streams. So it flows, it stops, it starts again, and then when the flow stops, they still feel that urge to pass urine, but they notice some dribbling afterwards. Sometimes they can just wake up multiple times in the night to pass urine. That's a little bit tricky as well, because we advocate for men to drink water. And unfortunately, a lot of them drink water before going into bed or wake up in the night to drink water. That will cause an increase in urination in the nighttime. However, what I'm speaking to is men who do not drink at night. They do not drink just before bed, and they're still waking up multiple times in the night. That's an indication that something is going on in the prostate. So it's not necessarily cancer, but it may be related to an enlarged prostate, or they may have blood in the urine, or they may just have recurrent urinary tract tract infections, these are the men that we would want to see as urologists to determine what is happening with them. And unfortunately, I'm still seeing patients, even though we're getting more men coming out, I'm still seeing patients who present with obstruction of the kidneys from prostate cancer. I'm still seeing men who present completely paralyzed from prostate cancer because they've never had their checks done. So one of the emphasis of the health fair is just to help men to recognize that you need to get tested, and not just men on a whole. We want to educate the women as well so that they can educate the men in their lives.
Right. All right. So the health fair is going to be when?
It's going to be next Sunday, this time, at the Turtle River Park in Ocho Rios. We're starting at 9. But usually our participants will come in before that time. But we are running from 9 to 5. And to be honest with you, Kabu, we have never ended at 5.
I know.
We've never ended at 5.
Yes, the past down there, it's only full.
We are always full,
yes.
you know, and if you'd give me a few minutes, I just need to big up our sponsors because of everything is offered free.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, I have a break, so quickly.
Right. So everything is offered free, and this is only because we have sponsors such as IRIFM, and we really have to thank you guys. You guys have been on board from day one, and we really do appreciate you. We have CariMed with Apotex, and Apotex, I must point out, they have been providing medication for free for our patients who have metastatic disease. So no longer do patients have to suffer and die because we don't have that medication. So Apotex has been really great with us. Moon Palace Foundation, Lasco Pharmaceutical, Great House Pharmacy, they've been excellent to us. Total Tools, Champion Supermarket has always been on board. NHF always been on board. St. Anne's Bay Regional Hospital where I work, Northeast Regional Health Authority, TBC Jamaica, General Food Supermarket are always on board. Apex on board, Phoenix Health Complex, Archus, NSDA, Dents Pharma, Wistinco, Nelson Sign and Printed have always been on board with us as well. Medtronic Security, Valley Life Pharmacy, First Regional Corporate Credit Union, Island Radiology, and yours truly, Clinic Health Limited. And these guys have really partnered with us to allow us to do everything for free. So men have no excuses in coming out to get their free checks done. And we do this annually for them. And it is a good move. And I think they should all come out.
All right, brilliant. I'll do a quick link with you, hopefully Sunday morning again while you're there. Thank you so much. So it's Sunday at Turtle River Park. Next week Sunday?
Next Sunday, May 25th at Turtle River Park.
Thank you so much. Dr. Marie Brown, urologist. Thank you so much. 100 years of Malcolm X. That's today, Sunday, May 25, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Randy Williams Entertainment Center. Performances by Okonuro, DYCR, Yashika Graham, Black Rasta on the Land, my brother, you need to heal me, Sizzla Kalonji, Rika G, Rasta Kura, and more. Admission early bird tickets at firstinlineja.com, $2,000. More at the gate. Patrons are reminded to take natural, non-GMO seeds for the seed swap. Contact dubpoems876@gmail.com, 876-573-1851, IG Dubpoems. All right, let me go to my next very special guest who is coming back from Abu Dhabi, Kwame McPherson. Commonwealth, a short story. Oh, where do I get Kwame on? Let me see. Oh, no, it's not this. No. Okay, so how do I get Kwame? Oh, yeah, let me try this. Let me see. Kwame, you there? No.
You can hear me?
Oh, yes, brilliant. We almost had a mishap.
Uh-oh, no man.
Yeah, because you're so technologically advanced, you're coming in different from all of my guests this morning. But there you go. There you go. You are on the part call selector.
Oh, wow.
I'm just about to tell you to haul and pull up, selector. All right.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, so Kwame McPherson is a Commonwealth Short Story Prize 2023 winner. He is a co-author of the Amazon bestseller Heart of a Black Man. He's a ghostwriter, content creator, editor, proofreader, and book mentor and strategist. And so much more about him. He's a Poetic Soul runner-up winner. And it's a whole lot, Kwame, and we don't have enough time. So let me come right back to this to say, welcome forward from Abu Dhabi.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Yes. The phenomenal experience,
Yeah.
It's when you're going to particular spaces representing not Jamaica but the entire Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good look. It's a good look, It's a good look.
Was that your first time in that area altogether, the Middle East, or you?
Yes. Yeah. No, it's my first time.
What was that like?
First time. Amazing, because we're in the West, right? So the information that we get about the East, which is very either it's lacking or it's misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually go there and you see for yourself that these people are way, way, way more advanced than the West, then you realize, about certain things, So, it was incredible to be in that space. A modern city, nice people, great food, and a wonderful book fair, I must admit. Like I said, I had the opportunity to present at 4 different speaking sessions, one of which was in front of one of the royal family members.
I saw that picture. You want to see how me get goose pimples? So you actually, yeah. So this, I want to say one of the members of the royal family. Who was this? And help us to understand.
Why? Her name was. I'm not try to see if I can pronounce her name because it's one long name that she has.
Well, if I can't say Otrahi, you can't say anything.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
It was in front of Her Highness. Sheikha bint Mohammed bin Khalid Al Nahyan.
Well said. There you go. I'm sure she wouldn't have a problem with that. You even sound Arabic. Shukran.
Oh wow.
Shukran. So
yeah.
So basically, what was it? Was it what you expected? Because obviously this is a book fair. You were presenting. And as you said, in front of even one of the royal family members.
Well, the whole scenario began, by an email dropping into my inbox.
Yes.
Now, when I first saw the email, I thought it was a scam.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a friend who's out in the UAE, and I said to her, check this out, just do some due diligence and let me know if it's legit. I did some due diligence myself and saw that it was legit in terms of the event taking place.
Yes.
And when I made the connection then it became more stark and real, They were inviting me over as a guest of honor.
Yes.
Because they have a segment now, which is just starting, where they have they're looking out internationally. Mm-hmm. So they have guest of honors from across the world. So the Caribbean was the first guest of honor.
Oh.
So I was representing the Caribbean, and of course I'm representing Jamaica, right? So I'm the first Jamaican to represent the Caribbean in the Abu Dhabi book fair. Mm-hmm. Guest of honor segment. So so that's basically what happened. And then they gave me a 5-star treatment all the way and everything else. And I didn't go with any expectation, but it was interesting to hear how hungry they are to learn. You know what I mean? They're hungry to learn about our culture. They're hungry to learn about our storytelling, about our writers, about history, because they have a snippet, but they don't know. You know what I mean? They know few of them know there's a region called the Caribbean, but many of them don't know about the Caribbean. If that makes sense.
And sometimes you have to say Bob Marley.
Exactly.
To orient people, especially in the middle. So then, in terms of the book fair itself, because here we are now, we're evolving. I mean, we're going into we're in the fourth industrial revolution where everything is in the cloud and you can.
That's right.
I see where Apple just developed a thing now where you can use your eyes and turn the pages and all them stuff. Yeah. And these are physical books, right? So
that's right.
How did these two things come together there, and what was the takeaway from that in terms of what are they saying the next book fair will be like? Are we still going to see hardcover books, hard books?
Yes, man. Yeah, man. You had over what 230,000 people pass through, and there was about 1,000 booksellers. And literally hard copy book. Not there's electronic aspects. There were a couple of
Kindle, no Kindle.
Yeah. But majority of people there, literally, like I said, it's a very successful book fair, one of the biggest in the world, and people are there to buy hardcover books
Right.
in terms of, it may have been Arabic and you had a few English, but people are there to buy books. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the fascinating thing.
I mean, if I can ask if you carry on, if you look for Omar Khayyam for me, because I'm sure you could find Omar Khayyam at that book fair,
Probably, more than likely. I should be heading back, because there's another one happening in later this year in Dubai. This one was in Abu Dhabi. There's a bigger one in Sharjah in November, which I'm aiming to get back to interact again and to sell the Caribbean in a sense, But,
so did you meet?
Remind me, remind me.
I am going to listen. I'll finish. Make a right until you can put it on. You can stay there. I won't forget that. So in terms of the Jamaican presence in Abu Dhabi, I know I saw an article in the paper that where you were interviewed and you talked about. Was it one single Dega Jamaican that you meet up down there?
No, man.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's interesting because there's various segments. So you have like the Jamaicans who went there are either chefs, teachers, engineers, or pilots, right? So there's a group of Jamaicans there I was able to interact with who live there and have been living there for years. A few come from the UK and living there because they're teachers and stuff like that. So no, man, there's a group who actually gave me good support on the ground, gave me good advice. Gave me good guidance, Chris Daly, Marcia McLeod, Diana Powell. They all gave me some really good, because they live there. So they gave me good pointers. And they even created a meet and greet for me by Ting Irie, which is a Jamaican themed restaurant, which is Jamaicans are there. I can't remember the girl. Crystal, that's her name, from Clarendon.
Yeah.
Who serves in there. Yeah. So Ting Irie, which is right on the beach. Down in Abu Dhabi there. So there's it's not a close community, I would say, but there are Jamaicans there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the literary community or literature and publishing and all that in Abu Dhabi, this is booming, isn't it?
It is. And like I said, they're hungry to learn about other cultures and like I said, we're on the cusp, I think, of and when I say we have the Caribbean, but we in Jamaica in particular, because we can sell the Caribbean. Because I had the opportunity to meet the ambassador from Grenada and the ambassador from St. Kitts and Nevis, and they said, we want you to come back and what you're doing here and teach all people how you got here and all that. So there's a potential for us to have a cohesive presence in the Middle East in terms of our Caribbeanness and our Caribbean, what we bring as Caribbean people, So there's a hunger.
Yeah.
There's a hunger.
And then just finally on your sessions, what came out of your sessions and how were they conducted? Was it interviews or you?
Yes, it was. Yeah, there were interviews. Yes. The first one was done by William Malhali, and he is one of the leading journalists in Abu Dhabi, and that was and everything was around. Like I said, I got the Caribbean writing, storytelling, talking about the history of the Caribbean. The second session was with Dr. Nebel, and he comes from Paris, and it was with a very learned Arabic doctor, actually. He was very, very abreast of what was happening in the Caribbean in terms of writing and our writers. And the third session was in front of Her Highness, and the fourth one was for the book fair itself, where they interviewed me, because there was a booth that they had created called the Caribbean Pavilion, and I had an interview in there in regards to the Caribbean again, and talking about so it was a phenomenal experience. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Yes. I was treated well. Like I said, people were just interested in the questions that I was getting, and they wanted to learn more. And so, like I said, there's a hunger for what we have. Yes. And to our creativity and a desire for it over that side. So I think now that I'm back, it's about exploring, because I made a number of contacts now. It's a matter of exploring how to solidify those relationships and to make something sustainable for us over this side.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long is the flight? At the last question.
Right. It was three and a half.
We lose
New York, and from New York to Abu Dhabi, about 12 and a half.
Okay, so
about 16 hours in total.
So 2 days. So put aside 2 days to go and 2 days to come back.
Yeah.
We love it. Thank you so much, my brother, and we'll talk to you soon again.
Thank you, my dear. Definitely, my dear. Thank you.
All right, Kwame McPherson, Commonwealth Short Story Prize 2023 winner. Advocacy at the UA Mona campus. He's also a poet and a self-published author of the book, I Forget the Money. Did you ever get the money, Omar? Because I know the book.
I'm getting the money. Getting the money.
Yeah. Omar has worked as a teacher, research, and administrative professional, as you know. We know him very well in this space. Melanin, my brother, how you doing?
I'm doing well for the most part.
All right. So the upcoming event at the Advocacy Center, the PJ Patterson Advocacy Center, tell us about that.
Well, as you know, the office, the PJ Patterson Institute, is all about providing platforms for discussions and just looking at the way possible for unification and continuing the process of liberation for Africans. And so I thought it necessary to have an event different from most of the events that we've had over the past few years, because we've mostly had symposiums and participating in conferences, but we need something different. And so for Africa Liberation Day coming up, which is going to be actually next week Sunday, but because it's on the weekend, on a Sunday, we're keeping a poetry event this Thursday to celebrate African Liberation Day. And I think it's very important at this time. We see what's happening with Ibrahima Traore, and that Africans, we still need our artists and everyone to campaign on the liberation, because we are still on that journey, Kabu, as you know.
Yes.
You've been a journalist dedicated to the liberation of African people in this space for more than 20 years. And so what we're doing with the poetry is just continuing to have conversations about how do we go forward. And so we have former poet laureate of Jamaica, Professor Lorna Goodison.
Yes, my favorite poet, by the one of my favorite poets, because I say that about a few, but definitely one of my favorite poets. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think she is the biggest name on the poster. And of course, my friend Kabu Mahat Keru of IRFM.
Yeah, me not belong on the poster, but me the party. Anyway, go on. Go on, yes.
And we also have Her Excellency Emiliana Bernard Stevenson. She's the Colombian ambassador to Jamaica, a good friend of mine as well. She will be participating. She's a very good poet, and I'm looking forward to hearing her pieces on Africa and Caribbean.
Yes.
And also we have Dr. Natalie Cortese. She's a lecturer in the Faculty of Law, and also a very excellent performer and reader and poet himself, Fabian Thomas. And of course, yours truly.
There you go. Sounds really good. What time? Remind us of a time, place, and space again, so our listeners.
Well, the time, it's an evening event, and it's starting at 6 p.m. on Thursday, this Thursday coming, and it will be at the PJ Patterson Institute for Afro-Caribbean Advocacy. And when you go to the University of the West Indies, it's at 30 West Road, closer to the Medical Sciences Building. A lot of persons sometimes know to find, but if you have Google Maps or Waze, it can easily direct you to 30 West Road, University of the West Indies.
All right. Okay, anything else we need to know about it? Is there a cost, or you just come in?
It's free, totally free, no cost to the public.
African Liberation Day. Thank you so much, my brother Omar. Anything you have to say on it? Does I give you a final word? Anything else?
Well, as much as I'm looking forward to the poetry and the discussions that we'll have in between the poetry, particularly, you know, the environment we're in now, so hostile to African people from the West, and at the same time, I don't think I've ever seen a time like this where Africans have been so proud of a leader, the young leader in Ibrahima Traore.
That's true.
So I really want to have some of those discussions on that evening, because it's all about African liberation.
Yes. Thank you so much, my brother. See you on Thursday. Tomorrow is Malcolm X 100 years of Malcolm X. And so I had to come in hard with the Malcolm X, and then the interviews were just back to back to back, and I still find myself with 7 minutes. This is phenomenal, because I thought I would have to be asking Big A for 1-2 minutes here and there, but I find myself with 7 minutes. And I want to mention a letter. Thank you, Big A, for drawing my attention to it. Also, written in the Gleaner. Was it last week? It was published, or earlier this week. This week, don't it, Big A? That this letter was published to the editor just a few days ago, actually, where the writer, who's Lynn, says, I'm writing to express deep concern and outrage after the disturbing practice emerging in some of the public schools where students are being asked to pay exorbitant fees, in some cases as much as $25,000 for graduation packages. This is not just unreasonable, it is a shameful indictment on the current state of the public education system. But this is similar to what we were talking about last week, a week before, because last week was Mother's Day. So we were talking about this a week before, Biggie and myself, in terms of the cost to parents and students in this graduation cycle. You read a letter, right, Biggie? Oh, grab your microphone. Oh, I think I turned it on. But I'm sure you did. He says graduation should be a moment of pride, a celebration of hard work and perseverance, not a financial barrier. In a country where many parents are struggling to put food on the table and send their children to school with basic supplies, this level of expense for public school graduation is both insensitive and exclusionary. He's right.
Absolutely.
He's
Absolutely. Right. The article is well written, and I have been thinking about it ever since I read it, and maybe we should go through the article before, but I can't help but asking, is this the part though? Is this the part of a bigger picture, meaning that are the schools underfunded? Why they seem to be ripping off the parents in the long run? Is this a way of funding the school activity?
And that's a very good question, but you listen to what you said of ripping off, because
it is ripping off.
Because even if the schools are underfunded, then there's no way that you can expect that a parent, any single parent, can afford, in addition to everything else that's happening.
Because you and I were doing a quick math the other day when we spoke about it.
Yes.
And we 25,000, by the way, is not the top figure.
No, it's not.
I know for a fact.
Yes.
Of parents paying upwards of $30,000-$35,000
for a graduation package,
and this does not, in some instances, include the photographs.
And this is we're talking about fifth form graduation, between fifth and sixth form graduation.
Right. And when you look at $35,000 for a school that has 150 graduates, right? When you multiply that, right? You're looking.
I'm going to tell you again, says more than 400 people are graduate, but go ahead.
All right, fine.
Yes.
All right. So I'm just saying that we're looking at the minimum now.
Right.
The absolute minimum of a 35,000 package for 100 students is $3.5 million you're talking about. We would like to know
at 25,000 per student.
At 35, right? 35. At 35, right? And at 25 is still $2.5 million.
25,
right?
So we know. Okay, you know schools that the fees, the graduation package, is 30,000.
Yes,
right, and this not necessarily include the photograph and the photograph packages. I said it 2 weeks ago and somebody corrected me, but it is true. Some photograph packages are 20,000.
Depending on what you want.
But why?
Well, you know how students are. They like to one-up. So they probably want the you see what happening is that you can get your picture engraved on all those things. On all different kind of things, and you know what I mean, right? So it is understandable why it can get to 20,000. But we're talking about a basic package of a few pictures, maybe in a frame and whatever. No, maybe no frame, right? So.
Well, he says, where is the oversight from the Ministry of Education? Why are school boards and administrators allowing such exploitative practices to persist? Who is standing up for the countless parents and students who will be left out of their own graduation because they simply cannot afford the cost? And this is Paul Lynn. It's Paul Lynn, who's from Christiana, Manchester, who's writing in the Is it the Jamaica Gleaner?
Yes. Very, very important questions.
Yeah.
Very important questions. And, I would love to hear, because let us be innocent of the situation. Let us say we do not know of what it takes. I would love to hear from a high school principal or administrator as to how you spend $2.5 million, $3.5 million on a graduation. In fact, a lot of these graduation in my day, graduation and prize giving was the same ceremony.
Right, that has changed.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how you spend $2.5 million, $3.5 million on a graduation?
Where does the money go is the question.
Where'd go?
I keep saying there's a lot of scamming in this, Biggs. There's a lot of...
Where does it go?
Pax Mexicana, we talked about it this morning. There's a lot of scamming in this thing.
No, I would really love to know some explanation as to how you do that. Because as I said, I am now wondering if that is the excuse that it is now, you make this money and you use it now to fund the programs.
Well, let us see that.
But that is wicked too.
That's the point.
That is wicked.
Because
you shouldn't be asking, you shouldn't be forcing. Because remember now, if you don't pay this money, you can't graduate it.
Yeah. So if you're working minimum wage and you have a child who's about to graduate from a high school this year, this is what you're faced with. It's at the end of the day, at the basic level, just a graduation package alone, just that whole graduation, including what I call prom nowadays.
No, it don't include that. No, that $35,000 don't.
No, I'm not fit with the prom, and I don't know why we took up this Americanized thing of saying proms in Jamaica. Why we not go back to the graduation ball? Put everybody in their place, and we're gonna and keep it in the auditorium. What a big prom situation!
If the balls are,
Even the balls are expensive, but I'm just saying, you got prom and you have children in Jamaica and parents allowing them to order stretch limousine. This is what I see turning up at some of the schools. What kind of foolishness is this?
It is.
What kind of messages?
And you have highlighted to me now that the themes of some of these graduations.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I
know.
Met Gala. No, come on.
Oh no.
No, come
on. I know.
No, aren't we being ridiculous? No, but you see, as I said, these proms, stroke graduation balls are relatives. Right?
Yes.
You don't have to go to them. But these graduation is a rite of passage.
Yes,
is a rite of passage. And everybody wants to graduate, right? Or to be seen as graduating. To be seen as graduating.
Yes.
And to stick up these parents and these students to say, if you don't fork over this money.
If you don't fork over $35,000. $25,000.
You cannot graduate. And I find that to be wicked.
Yes. I too.
Providing you cannot provide me with a solid explanation as to how this $25,000.
Is it too late for the Ministry of Education to intervene, for somebody to intervene? Is it too late? Because
we need some we definitely need some explanation and to call out some of these institutions if they cannot answer to why it is that these students and parents are being pressured to fork out this money at the end.
Because as a single parent, as by single parent I mean parents, mother, father, or however, but a single home, you can have one child graduating at fifth form, and just that whole thing run you into close to 100,000, and that is ridiculous. That the whole process.
The whole process, and this is coming on the back of these extra fees you have to pay during school time for so-called extra lessons and these tutorials and kind of thing. It is wicked, man.
It's too much pressure on the system.
And September the right as well.
Tell me about it. It is too much pressure on the system. I think them exorbitant fees.
September is right here, really and truly, when you think about it.
So maybe let's ask the Minister of Education to address, this come up every year though, every single year, and nothing has, as a matter of fact, it's getting worse.
And you know what, if you don't mind sharp, they're going to deny it and say nothing goes on.
Well, there are so many parents out there who have to pay them 35,000, 36,000, 25,000 that maybe parents have to stand up and say, well, yeah, we're asked to pay this amount of money.
No, of course.
And
this is the one time, parents are going to have to stand up for what they know is added pressure.
I think some parents just can't pay it, and so the child just will not go to graduation. They go pick up a certificate or a diploma the next day or whenever. I think people are so tired in Jamaica that some people are just saying, you know, go, you know, have the money, you know, go for the diploma.
And that is the reality of a lot of situations.
Well, Mr. Big A, I'm sure they heard you. I'm sure they heard us. So please, look here. And the reason why I stopped before was because, so we we have these conversations every year. Every year around them time, them conversations come up. And it's been going on for a long time. And it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So to me, there's something that is keeping it in place. And the point you raise about where the money is going, I think, is the answer. So follow the money. Follow the money.
As you always say.
Yeah.
As you always say.
Follow the money.
I was listening to you this morning, Kabu, and a couple of important things happening on the calendar for us in the diaspora. Mm-hmm. The Haiti situation, the anniversary.
Yes, today. Yeah, you see me red and blue, right? Flag Day.
100 years of Malcolm X. Yeah. I just, whenever I hear these moments come up, automatically I think of songs. And
I know you do. So who you are, but who we are.
No, there are a couple of them.
Okay.
Native.
I played Native Haiti.
You played Native.
Yeah, and you gave it to me,
I did.
Yes. So I played Native.
Did you play? Did you play Moto Barukas?
No, I can't find it. I look for it. 18 no, I looked for it and somebody thief it.
Let me see if I have it on
file. Yeah. So I couldn't find the one with Muta Mirza. So, but I did play Native. I think one of the days I work and left the mood, I should be putting up my computer. But anyway, so we have it?
I think.
Okay.
One Uptown TV. Yo, enough there, me I represent. Bang.
Been representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad, God, bad we bad, bad we bad, God.